Hi, this is Dan Matson. Please note this podcast was created several years ago. Some of the links, email addresses, phone numbers, and promos are outdated and no longer valid. Thanks and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 125. This is your host, Dan Matson, a.k.a. WoodenBoat Dan. If you can't do it, nobody can. And this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated 110% to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels in every country of the world and in extraterrestrial places if there are wooden vessels there. Although I would think there would be wooden vessels there if they were intelligent people. They would definitely build wooden vessels. Welcome to the podcast today, folks. Good to have you on board. I took last week off, as you probably know, or at least I announced the week prior to that I wouldn't be publishing last week, which was February 20th. Got some things done with moving and so on, but before I get into that, I did want to let you know today that the featured segment is an interview with Tom Jackson, who is the senior editor of WoodenBoat Magazine in Brooklin, Maine. And Tom's been with WoodenBoat since 1997. And interesting, he's actually from the Pacific Northwest originally, and he and I share some common ground here, which is pretty cool. So stick around for that interview. It's a lot of fun. So in the last couple of weeks since we chatted, we've been continuing to get ready to move, and I've had the time to go through just about everything I own, and it's making me sick to my stomach. No, I'm just kidding. It is a little overwhelming, though, the stuff you accumulate in 59 years. And I've had to make some tough decisions and say, 5 years ago or 15 years ago when I moved, I kept this because I thought I might use it, and I actually forgot I even had it, so it's time to get rid of it. So I've been getting rid of a lot of stuff and selling stuff, and it's been a good feeling. And I did announce a couple weeks ago that I sold my Delta Unisaw, and my idea was to save space and purchase a good portable saw, which would probably do everything I needed it to. So subsequent to that, those comments I made a couple weeks ago, I got the saw sold, and I just started to look at portable saws, not very hard, and I was at church on a Thursday night, and one of my friends was there, and I told him I sold my big table saw, and I was kind of lamenting about that, and he goes, I've got a table saw you could have. And I'm like, seriously? I'm thinking, okay, this probably isn't a very good table saw. But anyway, he's got a Grizzly contractor saw that he bought new about 20 years ago that he didn't use a lot, and the fence broke on it. So he purchased a new Fox fence in the last couple years and never put it on the machine because he bought a more portable saw. And so he's going to give me his Grizzly contractor saw. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think it'll take care of my needs just fine. And it's got a brand new fence that I'll put on it, so I'm going to check it out. And I am very thankful. I feel blessed to get a free table saw. And in exchange for the table saw, I told Bryce I would give him some dowel pins and some dowel markers. Marker's not the right word. If you're joining a couple pieces of wood with dowels, which you wouldn't be doing in a boat, although you might with interior work, you drill a hole in one piece and you put this little metal pin in there with a center marker on it, and then you tap it against the other piece and it gives you a center point for drilling your other hole. So I gave him a set of those and some dowels worth about $10 in exchange for this table saw. Just kind of a joke. But anyway, so I'm excited to try the Grizzly out. It's going to take a lot less space, and I think it'll be very adequate for what I am doing. So this past week, the other big news, and part of the reason I took the week off, is I wanted to work on getting my Kindle book published, which I did. It's actually published now. So get in the wooden boat game, A Guide for Building Your First Boat. which I have previously sold only as an ebook, a PDF file through my website and a couple other websites. I've now gone through the process of converting that to a Kindle book. So if you go to Amazon and you look up my name, Dan Matson, or you look up the book title, you'll find it there for $5.99. Yes, it is $1 more on the Kindle version. I thought that was a fair deal. And it probably took me maybe 20 hours to convert it to Kindle format, which is kind of a technical process. It was kind of fun, but I had to buy a little 30-page book guide to get it done right, because you've got to reformat a lot of things, and you can only use like GIF format for pictures, and you have to be careful or try not to use tabs and use the right fonts and all this stuff so it looks correct. But I got that all done, and the book came out great. So it's up on Amazon, so I would encourage you to check that out. If you're listening to this podcast and you have purchased my book and enjoyed it, I would encourage you to go to Amazon and leave a review for the book on Amazon. That would be awesome. That would help me to get a few sales going, I think, to get some reviews up there. You could be the first to review the book probably at this point. If you haven't purchased a book, I would encourage you to buy it and read it and give me some feedback on that. I would really appreciate it. And the other thing I was talking about here in a recent show was not fundraising, but trying to figure out how to make just enough money from the podcast to actually pay for the cost of doing it. In my podcast a couple weeks ago, I asked folks, give me your feedback. What do you think about a $30 a year membership for the website, or give me some other ideas how I could generate some funds, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a year to help pay for this thing. And so I had several responses. Nobody was real excited about paying $30 a year for the podcast, and I don't blame them. I don't really like that model anyway. But one of the ideas that came up several times from several of my listeners was to put a way to donate on the website, so that if you enjoy the website and you wanted to throw in a few bucks once in a while to help pay for it, you could do that. What I did, I don't really like the word donate for my website because I feel like a donation is more like you're donating your coat to the poor or that type of thing. More of a begging type of thing. And I don't want to be a beggar, but some of the sites I looked at have what they call a tip jar. And so I took a model from another website, and basically if you go now to my homepage of hookedonwoodenboats.com, at the very top right-hand side there's a button there. It's got a little graphic on it, and it's saying that if you can tip a little bit, that helps keep Hooked on Wooden Boats going. And there's a little button there that says tip here. And if you click on that, it takes you to PayPal, where you can make a one-time contribution, or you can even sign up for a monthly recurring contribution. So if you would like to help out and do that, I would encourage you to go to my website, click on that button, and make a contribution, and I would really appreciate it. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to keep it up there for a while, and hopefully that'll generate a little bit of money. Donations of $5 or $10 are gratefully accepted, or even $1 or more. If you feel like contributing more, I would appreciate it. And so I will keep you posted on the success of that endeavor. Well, I haven't been working on my new scamp because I've been getting ready to move. And once we do get moved this weekend, I've got to get my shop set up again. And I have a feeling it's going to take a little time. I got to get my shop lights up. I got to get some electric figured out, because this garage, it's a 2-car garage, but I don't think it has very many electrical outlets. So I got to get organized and get set up and all that stuff. So it might take me a little bit of time, but hopefully I'll be back in the wooden boat building game soon and have some fun with it. I really miss doing it. And I miss my shop here already that I had set up so nicely that I've disassembled. But anyway, it won't take me that long to set it up. And sometimes it's kind of fun to work in a new space, and I will definitely feel more organized this time around. We are going to move on to the interview with Tom Jackson from WoodenBoat Magazine. Let's roll the tape. Take it away, Tom. It's February 13th, 2013. I am on the phone with Tom Jackson of WoodenBoat Magazine. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Great to have you on board. Tom, you've been with WoodenBoat since 97, is that right?
That's right, yeah. I came here September 97, so it's going on 17 years, I guess.
Wow, must be really fun. I thought what we'd do, Tom, is start with a little chronology of your background. Maybe give us a personal history of your birth through 18 years, where you were and what you were up to. Well,
my father was an engineer, so we moved around a lot. We moved to Central Washington when I was just an infant. We lived in Ephrata, and he specialized in large dam construction. So we lived in Central Washington, then up in British Columbia, and then down in Oregon. So I went to high school at Sunset High School in Beaverton, and went from there to the University of Oregon. I guess it said something that the first class I signed up for at the U of O was sailing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did finish my degree there in journalism and worked for newspapers around the Northwest for a while.
Okay. So, Tom, you built a boat when you were 10 years old, is that right?
I did, yes.
Yeah, tell me about that experience.
Well, it was when I was a kid, I lived up in the Rocky Mountains in British Columbia, and the winters were long, and I was always building something. And I had it in mind to build a boat. I don't know why, but when I was young, it seemed like almost everything I did was related to boats in some manner. I became kind of taken with the subject. I built a lot of models, but I always had in mind that I was going to build a boat. So at 10, I did build one, which I'm glad that no photos survive of that incident. It wasn't pretty. It was basically a box, but with a great big square sail and a total disaster as far as handling and everything else. We launched it actually, I was going to launch it in the Columbia River, which up there is a pretty violent stretch of water. We lived upstream of a long stretch called Death Rapids, one of many Death Rapids and rivers all over.
Ooh.
And my mother said, "Oh, gee, Tommy, don't you think you should launch it in the gravel pit first?" And so we did. We launched it in the gravel pit, and which was flooded. And after a little while of that, we all went for a swim, and that was fine. Had a nice day. Took it home, broke it up for kindling, and went back to the research mode.
Okay. Was that a plywood boat, Tom?
No, it was cedar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it your own design, or did you follow some plans, or?
Oh, it was a box, basically.
It
was my own design, but it was just knocked together, and it was a bamboo pole for a mast, and it had shrouds and everything else on it. It was just a goofy thing. I don't even really want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, but as a 10-year-old kid, you were probably having a blast, right?
It was a lot of fun. I was building things all the time.
Yeah, what kind of other stuff were you building, Tom?
Oh, I took some old wooden skis, and built sort of a structure over those and aimed it downhill and sat on it and went for one long ride. Decided that wasn't really very very clever. But mainly what I really got into was building ship models. I was doing scratch-built ship models and writing away for plans. I would write to the National Maritime Museum in England and get some ship plans, and Mystic Seaport, and so I built quite a little fleet there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you become interested in all this maritime boating stuff, Tom, as a kid?
It's a good question. I don't really know. My father grew up in Virginia, and we would go visit relatives there, and we'd always see boats around. I was very much taken with the Chesapeake Bay boat styles. It all seemed very interesting. It was pretty exotic for a kid from the mountains. It seemed pretty, pretty interesting and different. And I don't know. I just loved everything about it. I loved the shapes of things. I loved to work out the plans and whatnot. And I seemed to be pretty adept at seeing in 3 dimensions from plans. So it was just a real pleasure. And the more I studied it, the more I got into it. And relatives kicked in. They'd always send me books, which got more sophisticated over time. And then I started adding my own books to my own collections. And just it's such an interesting, absorbing topic. It's very easy to get caught up with it. And there's no end of directions you can go. So for all those reasons, I think it just became really compelling to me. And I also became very interested in the history of it. In the Northwest, you're always connected to maritime history in one way or another, especially when I lived in Astoria. There's, of course, the Lewis and Clark journey, but also the English and American and Spanish explorations of the coast. So all of that history became very interesting to me. And where I lived in the Columbia River up in British Columbia, the fur trade history, David Thompson's explorations, that sort of thing. It was all right there, and very interesting. And so I just got deeper and deeper into it, and I couldn't get out.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I grew up in Vancouver, Washington. Went to high school there at Columbia River High School.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what years you were in high school at Sunset.
At Sunset, I graduated in '74.
Okay.
Okay. And then I went to actually 3 different high schools. One in BC. That school ended in the little town I was in. If you wanted to continue your education, you had to go out of town. So my parents lodged me in a private school in Portland for 1 year. It was outside of Portland, actually, in Raleigh Hills. And then they moved back to the States, so there was no need for me to go there anymore, so I went over to Sunset High School for my last 2 years.
Okay. My wife graduated from Wilson High School in Portland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, so I graduated from Columbia River in '72, so that's interesting. You were over in Portland about the same time I was in Vancouver.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And then, Ephrata, we do a lot of camping in Eastern Washington because it's such a beautiful place over there.
It is.
And
when I was a little kid, trees were frightening to me. we would visit relatives on the East Coast, and that's sagebrush country over there in Ephrata in that area. So the openness is something that really gets to you. It's part of you. And so when you go to a densely forested area, it's odd, very odd. But I got over it.
Yeah, that's funny. So what did you do in Astoria, Tom?
I went there as a newspaper editor.
Oh, really?
And continued to do that for, something like 8 years. Then my wife moved there. We met up in the San Juan Islands. She had a restaurant there, and she sold it. After a number of years, we got married, and then she moved down to Astoria, opened an art gallery with an espresso cafe, and eventually I went into business with her.
Wow. So, oh my goodness. So was the Columbia River Maritime Museum there when you were in Astoria?
Oh, yes, yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But
yeah, actually, it was one of the reasons why when I heard there was an opening in Astoria, it's one of the reasons that I applied there.
Okay.
I thought, well, that would be an interesting town and has a good museum.
Yeah. We used to, as a family, do a lot of fishing out of Ilwaco in our boat in the summers and stuff. That's a treacherous area to fish, though, man.
Yeah.
Going out over the bar and stuff. So your wife had a restaurant in the San Juans. Where was that, Tom?
In Friday Harbor.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it still there?
I think it is. It was called the Cannery House, and she sold it still with that name, and it went through a couple of other subsequent ownerships, and I honestly lost track of it. I don't remember whether it's still going or not. I believe it is, but I'm not certain about that.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of years.
That's such a beautiful spot, Friday Harbor.
It is. I haven't been back to Friday Harbor in quite a long time. I kind of owe it a trip at some point.
Yeah. So when you got out of school, was Astoria your first stop as a journalist?
No, I worked in a number of small papers around the Northwest. Springfield first, then Gig Harbor, then Friday Harbor, then Astoria.
Oh, okay. Which one of those was your favorite stop?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't know. I really liked Gig Harbor when I was there. It was a very interesting place. A lot of wooden fish boats around still when I was there. It was quite a wonderful place to go out in small boats. There was this rowing club there that a fellow named Rudy Moeller put together years ago. He was elderly then, so I don't know if he's still with us or not. But we'd row out to the sand spit and watch the boats go by. It was quite fun. From there, I went up to the San Juan Islands, which is a good place to be for a lot of reasons. But I was only there for really less than 2 years. Astoria was a fascinating place to go. When I went there were still a lot of gillnet boats just hauled up on the shore, kind of going down to weeds. It was in some ways I wouldn't say it was a bit rough. I would say in some instances. It's changed a lot since then. But I liked Astoria a lot. It has there's a very interesting kind of a town that's just sort of hanging on to that edge of the continent there, and these storms come bashing through, and it's alive and vibrant with weather and lots of interesting people. My wife and I had terrific friends there and still do. So yeah, I like being in Astoria, but when we ended up, my wife opened actually a restaurant in Astoria as well. And then when we sold the art gallery, which was called the Ricciardi Gallery, and I started casting about for the next thing for me to do. And at that very moment, WoodenBoat Magazine, my WoodenBoat Magazine arrived and had an ad for an editor in there. So I applied, thinking that I could do it from Astoria, but they offered me the job, but I did have to come to Maine to take it. So I've had a succession of very interesting places to live, I guess, would be the quick way to put it.
Boy.
Each one of them very different from the other.
Right.
I can't say I have a favorite. Astoria was terrific. It was great fun to go out to the ocean coast there. I did a lot of sailing out of Astoria. We had sailboat races there almost every week in a long season. I was sailing with a Scottish guy who would go out in anything. He was a terrific sailor, and in heavy rain or and blowing hard, and an awful current, one thing or another, and races where the guy who won is the guy who got across the channel before the log ship came through, that sort of thing. It was a very interesting place to sail. I think probably for wind and weather, it's probably quite a lot like San Francisco Bay. It winds right off the ocean, and it's a fascinating place. It would be typically calm in the morning, and then there'd be in the summertime, there's calm in the morning, then there would be building wind in the afternoon, and then would fade off in the evening. Sometimes blowing very, very heavily.
Did you have a boat of your own at that point, Tom?
I had a little fiberglass sailboat, which was totally unsuitable for that stretch of the world, and I sold it and used the money I got from that to buy materials to build the 18-footer that I currently have.
Yeah, so tell me about that, Tom. Was that your first real boat you built, so to speak?
Well, in a way, yeah. I in the time that I was working in newspapers and whatnot, I was moving around a lot, so I had no place to build, didn't have any money to build anything. I was collecting tools, though, and books, of course, and, kind of studying up. And then I got involved with the Oregon Historical Society in the late 80s, early 90s, and worked 2 years as a volunteer under Sam Johnson, who I think you had on just a couple of weeks ago.
I did, yeah.
He's now the director of the Columbia River Maritime Museum.
Yeah.
At the time, he was, I think, development director at Oregon Historical Society, and put together this program of building 3 longboats. I guess you'd call them ship's boats. The idea is that one was Spanish, one was American, one was English. So over the course of a couple of years, I went over to Portland every Saturday from Astoria, worked on these boats with a good crew. It was a fun, very fun project, and after they were completed, we used them in a number of different ways. So I gained a lot of experience there, and then after that, I started building my own boat. And I in the OHS project, there was a Danish man there. His name was Bent Tygeson. I think he's from somewhere down in the Willamette Valley. I think Tigard, someplace like that. I can't really remember, but he and I sort of clicked, I guess, on construction. And one of the things he told me was that in Denmark they would never build a lapstrake boat without the frame going all the way across the planking to support the plank all the way across its width. So I took that as a challenge, and I wanted to build that way. So when I set out to build this boat that I finally did complete, I built it in a sort of a Scandinavian style, planking first and frames after. And the frames are all sawn, and they're all joggled to fit the planking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So tell me again exactly your goal with the framing, Tom, on that boat.
Well, if you can imagine a typical lapstrake, a light lapstrake boat like a Whitehall or something like that, typically they have steam bent frames that are sort of run along the inside of the planking. And in a lapstrake boat, typically the planking only touches those frames where the sort of the top of the plank is, where the planks overlap.
Oh, right, because of the angle of the plank.
Right. So in this Scandinavian style of construction, typically they build, in the typical, I guess, American style of lapstrake planking, you would build upside down over a jig, steam bend these frames, and then put the planking on. In the Scandinavian style, you build upright. You put the planking on first. I did it over molds, and then you insert the frames after the planks are completed.
I see. Okay.
So it's a very different process.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, a great challenge. It took me a long time to build this boat. I was pretty adamant about doing everything myself, and so I started it in Oregon, but I didn't finish it until I moved to Maine.
Really?
In my defense, I moved across the country in the middle of that. I was remodeling my house in Oregon at the time that we lived there, and then I had to remodel a house in Maine after we got here. So I had to kind of fit it in, various life patterns, I guess you'd call them. I did a lot of work on our house here, and then finally I told my wife, I don't want to do any more work on this house until the boat's done. Then I'll come back to it. And so I went after it hard, and it's a complicated build, complicated construction. So I finally did build it. I cast my own bronze. I built my own sails. I think the only thing in the boat that's not made are the two pad eyes on the after deck. Really, everything else is kind of made from scratch, except for fastenings, of course.
What year did you finish that boat, Tom?
I launched it 7 years ago.
7 years ago, wow.
Yeah.
So is that a traditional copper riveted lapstrake, or is it glued plywood lap, or?
No, it's a traditional construction, and it's this style I was just telling you about with the Scandinavian style framing. So it's copper riveted laps, and then bronze screw fastened to the frames.
I see.
To the planking at the laps. It was a very interesting project. I really wanted a challenge. I didn't care how long it took. The boat, I lofted, I think, 3 boats before I finally selected this one, and I was thinking about the lower Columbia River when I chose it. It had some features that I thought would do very well there. 2-masted rig, for example, was blowing really hard. It's good to have the rig divided. In that area, we had lots of, tons of current. I mean, sometimes the channel markers in the area, especially near the bridge, would get almost knocked over completely by the current. They'd leave a bow wave, as the current was especially going out. So it's a pretty rough area. Lots of floating debris, lots of old pilings, deadheads around. So it's an area where you kind of have to be careful. So I overbuilt the boat. It's heavily framed and it's heavily planked. It's 1/2-inch planking. And I was thinking that this boat would do well in the Columbia River. As I built it, I would just, whenever I had money or time, I would go buy enough materials to move ahead a little bit. and then I'd stop and then go back and work on it some more and just keep picking away at it. And I liked as I built the hull, I really liked it. I still do. But my philosophy, I guess, of this boat changed quite a lot over time, because as I was building it, things changed. For one thing, I'm not on the Columbia River anymore. I'm in Maine, so the waters here are quite different from what we had in Oregon. Also, I became influenced by a lot of other different things. So as I built the boat, there was no construction plan for this boat, so I could literally make up things as I went. This was a setup. It's a no man's land boat. The plans came from the Smithsonian Institution. For people listening who know about Howard Chappell and his books, it's in American Small Sailing Craft, and it's plate number 63. All it is a set of lines taken from a half model. It shows the mast step locations and the mast rake. It shows the rudder profile, centerboard trunk profile and location, and nothing else. So there's a lot of freedom there, but then a lot of decision making too.
Yeah.
Because there's no construction plan, you have to decide everything. Where width of the keel, where the joints are for the stem and the gripe and the stern post and all that. But the boat had a lot of character that I liked for the Columbia River. One thing it had, for example, is a straight stern post. So in a seaway, if the rudder has a problem, you have a fair chance of getting it back on. I liked that a lot. The split rig was important to me. There was no indication of a deck in the drawings. So I thought, well, I'll just decide that when I get there. And that's what I did. Ultimately, I incorporated features of other boats that I liked a lot that seemed to fit well, especially the deck and combing arrangement, for example, are very much like the Bristol Bay sailing gill netters. So fairly narrow side decks, fairly short end decks, great big oval combing, lots of interior volume, very easy to handle the rig by going forward. You're right at the base of the mast. It's easy to get the anchors, set and retrieved. A lot of things about it that I liked. The gill netter design that I liked a lot. Also incorporated the mast gate from that particular style of boat. There's a heavy mast partner going across with sort of a semicircle cut out of it, amidships in the aft part of the partner. And then bronze flat bar that comes off top and bottom on each side. And then the mast gate itself is a casting that has a couple of holes in it, and it sets on belaying pins. So it's a bit of a refinement of the Bristol Bay style, but it's very much like it. So to get the mast down, it's an unstayed mast. So all you do is you pull one of the belaying pins off and rotate the gate, and there it is. You can get the mast right down. I like that quite a lot. Let's see. When I was sailing in Raid, Sweden, I think it was 2005, I noticed that the Swedes all have athwartships floorboards. They never run they have lap-strake boats generally, and they don't run the floorboards fore and aft, they run them across. That made sense to me because you can butt the planks right up against the floorboards right up against the planks. I like that a lot, so I incorporated that. When I was sailing in France in the big maritime festivals in Brest and Douarnenez, I sailed a lugger, and so I became quite fond of the lug rig and incorporated that into this boat. Very much French practices. What else? Full pin rowing. Made all of my blocks and rigging fittings. But in the whole, it works out quite well. I've been very happy with the boat.
Wow, Tom! Congratulations. That's like a huge project.
Well, I figured, I'm not a wealthy person, so I think, I'm not going to be building a great succession of boats here for myself. So I might as well take my time and do one that I really like, and that has worked out. I have to say, it suits me.
So do you keep it in the water during the summer, Tom?
I do. Yeah, I keep it at Center Harbor, which is where Brooklin Boatyard is.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that's about a 8 or 10 minute walk from my house. I live in town in Brooklyn, right near the post office, so I can walk down to the boatyard from the house. I built a dory a while back that I kept there too for years. I keep it now just basically in the back of my truck, but I kept it at the dinghy dock at Center Harbor for a long time, and for years I would walk down to the dory and jump in and row to work at WoodenBoat.
Oh, really?
School dock here, and then I have to go off and anchor, and then go through this whole rigmarole and get ashore, and then walk up the office, go to work, and then do the whole thing in reverse on the way home. I did that for a number of years. I really enjoyed it. Being in touch with the water every day like that is just spectacular. Really enjoy it.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. I'm a little jealous, Tom.
Yeah, that was nice. This is a terrific area for rowing and for sailing.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that Maine has it's been a very interesting place for me to be. When I came out here, I didn't really know the East Coast all that well. I had relatives in the Boston area, a sister in Maryland, but I was thinking, this will be fun. We can go to Boston for dinner every once in a while. But Boston's a 5.5-hour drive from here, and so Maine is substantially more remote than I ever expected, and far more remote than any place I lived in the Puget Sound area or Oregon, and far less populated. So it's a terrific sailing area. We have lots of. It's kind of a shredded coastline, like peninsulas hanging down, islands everywhere. The tide generally is. It's about the same tide range that you would have in Puget Sound, but the current tends not to boil in one direction. It's not like a draining kind of a tide. It's confusing sometimes because tide seems to go in areas you wouldn't expect it to go at certain times. So you have to read it pretty carefully. But it's a scenic and wonderful area for sailing.
Yeah.
Very often don't get too much wind, but often have enough. It does get a little bit light. So when I did my rig for this boat, I changed. The rig I have now, I would never have on the Lower Columbia River. It would be ridiculous. But here, it's fine. I have a large dipping lug mainsail with three hefty reefs in it. So in light air, I can set quite a lot of sail, and I reef as needed for the changing conditions.
I see.
My mizzen is a sprit rig with a boom. And that's worked out well for me anyway. A lot of people wouldn't like that sail, but I do enjoy it. Yeah.
Cool. Tell me a little bit about your dory too that you built, Tom.
It's a Bolger, Gloucester Light dory. It's the 15 feet, I think. It's a wonderful solo rowing boat. I actually use it as a tender for the big boat. Like last year, for example, we had the small reach regatta here, which is something I started about, I think it's 9 years ago now. Last year we had it at Muscongus Bay, which is the next bay over from Penobscot Bay. So it's quite a distance from here. It's something like 45 nautical miles to this place from here. So I sailed down. I don't have an engine, so it's I kind of prepare for all that. I towed the dory, and it was just terrific to be able to anchor the boat and have some of my gear in the dory, a little bit more room in the boat, and then in a couple of places I met up with other people, and in a couple of places we just hung out for a while, and it was great to just be able to go for a fast row around the cove with the dory. I enjoyed that a lot.
Is that a glued plywood boat then, or
it's plywood? Yeah.
Well, how much does that boat weigh, Tom?
Straight sided, so it's not like a lap striker multi-chine. It's a flat bottom and straight sided boat.
Does it have a tombstone transom or?
Yes. Yeah.
How much does that boat weigh?
I think it's about 150. It's my wife and I can move it together. Usually we have it's better with a couple of people, but I can move it myself if I get a roller underneath it. So it's I can get up in my truck by using clever leverage and balance on sawhorses and things like that. So I'm pretty adept at launching it myself and moving it around. It's I think my personal feeling is that extreme lightweight in boats is kind of overrated. I think unless you're going to be picking the boat up yourself and like putting it on a car, I don't think it really matters that much. If it weighs a little more, you're going to be getting it on a trailer or on a roller or something. It's not like you're going to be picking it up and carrying it away unless it's a canoe or an extremely light boat. So,
yeah, right.
I don't mind having a little weight in the boat when I'm out in nasty conditions.
Yeah, that's true.
So the dory is probably heavier than most. I think that it's 3/8 inch Meranti plywood, Douglas fir chines, Douglas fir bulkheads, and Philippine mahogany thwarts. So it's but it's been a very, very good boat. I realized just the other day that I think I've been using it now for, I think it's 15 years, and it's holding up well. It has taken a beating at the dinghy dock, just as boats will. If you're in a crowd there, that's the way it's going to be. So I've armored up a little bit with a little bit of metal chafing gear, and I made some gunnel fenders that are just made out of pipe insulation wrapped in canvas and tied down to the gunnels, and that has worked out quite well.
I saw that in your picture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you wrapped pipe insulation in canvas, huh?
Yep.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it was a cheap solution. It's I bored holes just under the gunnel on each side, and about every 8 or 10 inches, and just lashed it right down. So the pipe insulation is that type that has the slit along it, and you sort of wrap it around the pipe. They come in 3 or 4 foot lengths, and that's the stuff I use. And it's because it's out of the sunlight, it has lasted actually a very long time. The canvas I've replaced once in that 15-year period, and admittedly it does get a little raggy, but it has worked out quite well. I like it. I like it a lot.
Very cool. So Tom, I'm just curious, your time at WoodenBoat Magazine, do you have a story or two that you've written that are the most interesting to you, most fascinating?
Well, yeah, I've kind of made a habit, I guess, of trying to have some adventures. I've been working in shipyards alongside shipwrights in various places over the years for articles. The first one of those I did was at Mystic Seaport. I built a whaleboat. I helped build a whaleboat with Willits Ansell, who was a guy who worked at Mystic for a very long time and wrote a book called The Whaleboat. So and he was teaching some of the shipwrights at the yard, including his own son Walter, what he learned about building whaleboats over his years there. So I did that for 2 weeks. I think it was 1 week in the summer, and I went back in the fall. I went to work in another shipyard. Kind of surprised me, but Bill Elliott at Bay Ship and Yacht in Alameda, California, runs it. It's a large yard that he has there, but he has an old tie to wooden construction. Has done a lot of work with the National Park Service boats over the years, and his yard was engaged to rebuild the C.A. Thayer, this big 3-masted schooner that's in the collections at Hyde Street Pier. And so I went to Alameda and worked a week with the shipwrights there during that project and wrote about it, which was an awful lot of fun. It's heavy industry. It was, the size of things is just amazing. The ceiling. When I was there, my job, which was not much of a job, but it was pretty fun. My job was dubbing frames on the interior, way up aft. So we were dubbing frames in to make way for the ceiling planks that were being brought in. Well, these ceiling planks were like 8 inches thick by 14 inches wide by 80 feet long.
Oh, my goodness. That's a ceiling planking?
Yeah, so the size of things was just extraordinary. It was unbelievable. So I can remember I was working in this. The frames are slippery. They've been coated with oil and borate solution. So you're trying to not fall down. And we were dubbing with enormous angle grinders. Big heavy tools. And so you're trying to get situated and get in a place. You got a helmet on and eye protection on and hearing protection on and knee pads on and everything else. And I can remember stopping once and looking up, and there was like a cloud going over, and it was one of these big planks being hoisted into the ship, which was a half-a-day project just to get one in, and really interesting to watch. I love that project.
So is dubbing the same as fitting? Is that what that is, Tom?
Well, it's just taking off. You can imagine if your frames are you're inside a big ship and the frames have been installed. There's some unevenness from one to the next. Mm-hmm. So you just lay a batten along and find the high spots, take them off.
I see. Yeah.
And make it clean and fair, so the plank is lying against wood for its length.
Yeah.
Which is a small job in a small boat, but it's something you need to do for that type of construction, for saw and frame construction. I did it in my own boat, but on this scale, it's the same project. Lining off is the same. Cutting the plank is the same. Everything is the same. It's just huge, and so the amount of time and the amount of attention that it takes is substantial. So that's what that was about. Mm-hmm. More recently, I worked on the Charles W. Morgan whale ship restoration at Mystic Seaport. I was 3 weeks on that project. That was for an article that I did about the restoration, and they've been great for me. They know me pretty well. I run the skills demonstrations at the Wooden Boat Show, which we have done there for a number of years now, and as a result of that and my work with the whale boat and also with the whale ship, they know me pretty well. So I was surprised though, because the last time I worked there, I was working on ceiling planking. So I showed up for work Monday morning, and a guy that I know named Trevor says, "Oh, okay, Tom. Well, we're doing ceiling planking, and come on up in the ship. I'll show you where we are." And so we went up in the ship, and he said, "Well, here's our next strake, and you can go ahead and spile it, and just if you need anything, let me know." And then he left, and so here I am thinking, well. This is kind of big, but so I spiled and I went back to him and I had all my numbers. I was very careful, trying to be very precise, and so he said, "Okay, well, let's go get you a plank." And so we took the forklift and went around and found a plank that would work and got it around in the big shipyard on sawhorses and dropped it there. And he said, "Okay, well, I'll be on the other side of the shipyard. If you need anything, let me know." And off he went. So I made the plank, and thank God it fit. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's funny. And then you were out working on the Adventurous. Was that last year here in Port Townsend?
Yeah, it was January a year ago. They were doing it was the port side, planking and framing. I worked there for really only a few days, and then through the Martin Luther King weekend when they had a large contingent of volunteers that came in. That was the purpose of my article, was to kind of focus on that effort, which I think is very impressive. So I worked with the Haven Boat Works guys, and mostly I was driving bungs, helping to carry planks and run them through the big planer, which takes 3 or 4 people at least per plank to get them through and carry them around, and get them where they need to be. That was about it, I guess. Mm-hmm. Very fun project, and impressive how Haven Boat Works is open to having that many volunteers come in. I think for a private shipyard, that's probably pretty unusual. But I think they have a history of doing that with people who own their boats. So they're used to working alongside people who have a stake in the boat. And I have to say that the Adventurous effort, with the number of people that they have and the amount of work they get done over the season, is really quite impressive. That's why I did that. I wanted to do that article, and that's why I came out to do it. Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. So, Tom, give us a little update on what's happening at WoodenBoat Publications and so on.
Well, working along on getting the issues out. Our publisher, Carl Kramer, is retiring in April, and so that'll be a change. And people who come to work here generally stay for a very long time. I think Carl's been like 30 years, so it's pretty remarkable to see that happen. And I don't know really how it's going to resolve, but I'm sure it will, and things will move on. The WoodenBoat School is marching along. I think right through the recession, the school has been very steady. I think people are pretty committed to learning boat building at certain times in their lives. And my personal belief is that most people they're a little bit like me. They're kind of going around getting their career together and getting their tools together, and then when the time is available, then they'll go ahead and build that boat that they always wanted to build. It happened for me as a volunteer on a project that I got some side-by-side work with people. Schools are a great way to do that as well. Ours is, our classes here are 1 week or 2 weeks generally. So people come out and learn the skills and then go home. I'm sure most of them, or if not all of them, build boats eventually. So the school's been very steady. Our articles with the magazine continue to, it's continually amazes me that we have kind of a barrage of great ideas that come in from readers, from writers, from photographers, from our own people that we use a lot. So it's fun to see.
Yeah. So how do you, that must be a big job in itself, Tom, just sifting through everything and deciding what you should publish. I mean,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have a lot of good material.
We have a system that we log everything in a computer so we don't lose track of it, and run databases and keep track of things that way. It's a very effective system.
Yeah. So has a new publisher been named to replace Carl?
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's a while yet before he leaves, so I'm not
see.
exactly sure how that's going to resolve.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yep.
And so if people want more information about WoodenBoat, what's the contact information and so on, Tom?
Well, the best way probably is the website, www.woodenboat.com. That has access to everything that we do here, including we have a very active online forum, which I think this month, I wrote something in my column. I do the currents column at WoodenBoat, and I wrote something that in the issue that's out there now. I think we're going to go over 3 million posts to that forum sometime this month.
Wow.
It's a pretty amazing collection of characters and ideas. Most of it having to do with boats. There's one section they call the bilge, which is a bit off the subject, but really it's a pretty amazing thing. But yeah, that's the best place, I think, is the website. And that has all of our address information, contact information, that sort of thing.
And you guys have a research library there also.
The library is one of the best things about the facility here. It's open to the students who come to the school. They come up during the day, or I think they keep it open in the evening a couple nights a week. It's a fabulous collection, and I think people have contributed to it over the years. People have collections of their own, and they get up in years and decide what am I going to do with these books, and often they'll come here. So it has very complete sets of periodicals like the Rudder, Yachting, Forest and Stream, remarkably complete. Not totally complete, but very close. Chasse Marais, the French magazine, and also books both foreign and domestic from all sources. So it's a really wonderful library. One time, just for fun, I thought I'd go to the Seattle Public Library and just sort of see what they had.
Yeah.
And the Rudder magazine, for example, WoodenBoat's set is much more complete than the Seattle set, which I found a bit surprising. But
yeah.
But because it's a dedicated sole purpose library. I guess that's what allows that to happen.
Where was Rudder Magazine published, Tom? Do you know?
When?
Where?
Where? New York, I think.
Was it? Okay.
I
Okay.
believe so. Thomas Fleming Day, I think, started it in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it stayed there for its whole run. I'm not sure.
Yeah, very good. Well, I appreciate your time today on the podcast, Tom. It's really been fun chatting, and I wish you the best there at WoodenBoat. Any parting comments you'd like to make?
Oh, not really. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Appreciate your interest in wooden boats, and I hope that see you on the water or in Port Townsend or somewhere.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks, Tom. We'll chat after we hang up here, but thanks for being on the podcast.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you take care.
Bye-bye.
Tom, thanks for taking the time to do the interview. It was really fun chatting with you, and it's amazing the close geographic ties that we have from your time here in the Northwest, in Portland and Eastern Washington and the San Juan Islands and those places. And I really enjoy what you guys do. Your magazine is awesome, and the people there that I've gotten to know are really great. So keep up the good job, Tom, and look forward to seeing you out here, hopefully at the festival in September. That would be great. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. If you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to subscribe to my free newsletter. You can do that by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe, and I send that out monthly. And you can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. I've got a few YouTube videos up there. I need to start working on some more. It's fun to do short videos, just 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 1 minute, whatever the case may be. And I'm gonna try to do some more of those this year, try to build an audience there. You can also email me, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. And if you enjoy the podcast and would like to help defray the costs of doing it, if you go to my homepage, you can click on the tip button and leave a few bucks there in the tip jar. I would appreciate it. Well, have a great week. I hope you're in the wooden boat game already, but if you're not, you need to get in now because it is really, really a fun thing to do. Great pastime, you meet fun people, you get to work with your hands, do something that's traditional, historic, creative. It's just a very rewarding experience. So get in the game, have some fun with it. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless. We'll talk again next week.